Welcome to Shovel Talk, a podcast for economic developers. From your friends at the Golden Shovel Agency.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Shovel Talk. We're excited to have the CEO of Four Corners Economic Development down in New Mexico, Arvin Trujillo, on the episode today. We'll meet him in just a moment, but of course, we first need to know where in the world is Amanda?
Yes, so I have moved from the open air eco lodge in Kenya that I was at with all the monkeys and the critters over to Cape Town, South Africa. And it is absolutely amazing. I have coverings on my windows, no bugs getting in. It's been awesome. I've only been here a few days, but I have a lot of things on the agenda to do, really, really awesome stuff. So on a future episode, I'll have to tell more about that. But one thing that I've gotten to do so far is have lunch at a place called Camps Bay. And it is just one of the coolest sceneries I've ever seen in my life. It really brings together in just the same scene, the mountains and the beach and the ocean. It is gorgeous. And so it's an area of the beach where you can view a mountain range called the 12 Apostles. And it is a really, really unique mountain range. It's absolutely gorgeous. So when you're standing on the beach, you look out to the left and it's the mountain range. And then all the, the apartments and hotels and in the side of the mountain. And then it goes into like beautiful restaurants, lines of palm trees, the sand, and then the ocean. It's really cool. Something that I hadn't seen before. So it has been great. I'm really excited to tell you guys more about what I have done once I've done these things. There's like penguins and which I never knew there was a penguin colony in South Africa. I don't want to give away too much. I'm so excited about all the stuff on the agenda, but yeah, that'll have to be saved for a future episode.
Well, thank you, Amanda. And now everybody, let's just take our moment here and just feel extremely jealous that we're not Amanda. So here we go. Let's take a moment. All right, now let's get on with our podcast. Arvin Trujillo, CEO of Four Corners, New Mexico Economic Development. Bethany, take it away.
So Arvin, my first question to you has to be, you are a fellow Nittany Lion. So we both went to Penn State. And I wanted to know, you went to Penn State, you had a mining engineering degree from there. And tell us a little bit about your time in Pennsylvania and maybe why you decided to come back home after that.
Well, Bethany, well, it's good to hear that you were a fellow Nittany Lion. It's kind of funny. When I did my undergraduate work, I went the pre-med route and got to the point to where I took my MCATs. And at that point, suddenly I was deciding that maybe the medical field wasn't the direction for me. Ended up working at a mining operation here in Fruitland called Navajo Mine, and got really interested in engineering. From there, I applied to a number of mining schools throughout the country. I got accepted to a number of them. I'd been to all the areas here in the western part of the US. I got one from Penn State, and I had just gotten married. And my wife and I talked about it. And we both said we'd never really been out east. So why not take a chance? And so we packed our little U-Haul and had our little vehicle, and two young kids in their 20s headed out east. And we went to State College, and that was a whole new world to us. But I got involved there, going to school at Penn State, ended up going there for 3 years, and then came on back. There were job offers there in the eastern part of the US, but I really didn't want to go underground. Mm-hmm. I liked strip mining. I enjoyed dragline operations, etc. And so that's what brought me back out west.
Sure. And honestly, it's probably was a really fun adventure for you guys to take some time away, and then you decided you want to come back home. That's great.
One thing, though, was it was really green out there versus the way things are here at home.
It is. Yes. There's so many trees, and you're surrounded by the mountains. So it's very green. It's very rural for anyone who's never been to the Penn State campus. But we always like stories too, where people do leave and explore a little bit. Anyone who's been listening to our podcast obviously knows that Amanda is our resident explorer right now. But to see that you did decide to come back home. So what really drew you back? You said obviously career opportunities, but clearly that was a decision you and your wife made to head back out west. So what is it about maybe the quality of life that you like or prefer?
Yeah, we live mainly in a real rural setting here on the reservation. And I wanted to come back into this part of the country. And in a way, it was a roundabout way. Back in the 80s, when I finished school and came back here, engineers were pretty much a dime a dozen. And with the operation I used to work at, they had changed ownership. And so there really wasn't a position for me. So I ended up teaching in high school for about 6 months. And then from there, I was able to get an interview with Mobile Coal up in Wyoming. And that's where I had my first opportunity to get into the mining industry, working for Mobile Coal up in Gillette, Wyoming for about 4 years. Then at that point, I was hired back down here with BHP Minerals and ended up coming back home here and working for BHP Minerals for about 9 years. But, it was just being out west. We liked the quality of life out here, the outdoors, enjoy the activities outdoors. We're not used to having homes side by side. We like to have some space between homes. And for myself, I do like going into town. I don't like living in town. And so again, those things kind of play to that aspect. Plus the fact that being Navajo, being able to come back and really finding ways to contribute towards my tribe, that was another real motivation as I was growing up.
Sure. No, it's been fantastic. You had the opportunity to do so.
So it's been quite a journey for me. And my career has taken a lot of different turns as I've gone through. I started off as a mining engineer, worked both in Wyoming and here. Then I was asked to join the Navajo Nation as President Kelsey Begay's head person for the Division of Natural Resources. I thought I was just going to be there for 4 years, but I ended up being there 12 years because after he lost his reelection, the next president, Joe Shirley Jr., asked me to stay on. So I ended up staying on for another 8 years with the Division of Natural Resources. And then from there, I got involved with utilities, came back, worked for Four Corners Power Plant here in the Farmington area, and then now here with Four Corners Economic Development. So there's been a lot of twists and turns with my career.
Sounds like it's been a bit of an adventure.
It has. And it's been good. It's been good.
So Arvin, you've had several roles with the Navajo Nation and you've been involved in several major projects. Tell us about the most notable project that you've worked on.
I think for me, there were really two. The most notable one was there had been a decades-long dispute between the Navajo Nation and one of its neighboring tribes, the Hopi tribe, on land. And that was a long-term dispute that had been going on ever since I was in high school. It started back in the 50s. And when I went and worked for the nation, I became involved in those discussions and those negotiations along with the Attorney General, then Louis Danette Sosi. And I took on the natural resources issues. He took on the legal issues. And we were able to resolve that decades-long dispute between both tribes. And now we have clear boundaries between the tribes and clear understanding in terms of water rights, land rights, et cetera. So that was a long-term dispute that I was a part of being in the decision-making process. And the other one was we were working on developing a water pipeline from the San Juan River in through New Mexico to another community called Gallup, New Mexico, which is about 100 miles away from the San Juan River. In the development of that pipeline, we needed to get water rights resolved between the Navajo Nation and the state of New Mexico. I was also involved in those negotiations, and as a result, we were able to resolve those negotiations, and that was really the first water rights negotiations that the tribe was able to resolve for a number of decades also. And that's opened the door to other negotiations that have happened between the nation and the other states that surround the Navajo Nation. So again, those were two things that never thought I'd really be involved in when I first started, but got involved with it and happily proved to be successful.
So, Arvin, I'm wondering, just, as someone who has worked in economic development, I was an economic developer in California, served on city council, worked with other jurisdictions in my area. And a hurdle, a big hurdle is a lot of time resolving those longstanding issues between two different, governments or jurisdictions. So what was it that really allowed you guys to get past some of those longstanding issues and come to a resolution with the projects you mentioned?
That's a really good question. And Amanda, what I think the biggest thing that I went in and did was, one, really began to open dialogue. And the big piece to opening that dialogue was to begin to establish trust. The big thing I also did was look back at what had happened before. Because sometimes people go into situations like that thinking, okay, I got a clean slate. But you got people there who lived through other disputes, and there might have been some mistrust or there might have been some misunderstandings. So better understanding those things and then going in with a really open mind and saying, look, I am the new guy here. I understand there were differences, but I want to develop a relationship that will help us begin to have a dialogue with each other, understanding that there are still differences of opinion, but can we find common ground in order to begin our discussions and finding ways to, can we resolve it? Can we mitigate it? What can we do to get past this issue to allow us to come to some type of an agreement? That was the type of approach that I took. And it took time. And there was a lot of frustrating moments within those discussions. But again, persevering through that and sometimes allowing people to vet and trying to help people say, look, don't take it personally. Let them say what they got to say. Get it off your chest. And then from there, we can then begin to find a way to establish common ground and dialogue to begin to resolve the issues that are in front of us. So that's what I tried to do. At times, people were trying to make things personal. You try to work things to where you don't criticize on a personal basis, or you don't judge on a personal basis, but you look at the situation, or you look at the circumstances, and you look at those things and try to help the group understand this is what we're trying to achieve here. Yes, criticize the process, criticize the situation, criticize, but once we criticize, let's not just criticize, but let's come in with what can we do to resolve it. And so again, it was really looking at and establishing that type of dialogue as we went through.
Arvin, I think that your comments on that approach are so needed at this time, because we live in a time in history where we tend to maybe not listen to each other enough. And we do seem to take that combative approach, and it doesn't really help to solve things. So I really appreciate you sharing that story, because I think it's something that we all maybe need to take a step back and remember sometimes.
Again, that's helped me now in this situation, because we're a very diverse area here. We have 4 states. We're right in the 4-state region of the US, having Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. We have 4 tribes in the region here: the Navajo, the Southern Ute, the Ute Mountain Ute, and the Hickory Apache. And there's history amongst all of us. And so again, building those partnerships is critical for this region, because you can't look at diversifying an economy or bringing economic development or marketing to the area unless you have the other groups involved with you. And so a lot of the experience that I saw with the Navajo Nation, and even in the mining industry, because I was involved in different environmental discussions with the federal government or with communities, it was really looking at how do we bring people together and how do we work together to resolve issues and find solutions to challenges or to problems that are confronting that particular group at that time. So I think a lot of that training has really been helpful as I've moved through my career.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the things I want to follow up on with that is you've mentioned in the past, the importance of really bringing the tribes to the table for these discussions. And, with your background, obviously you already have those relationships. So that's easier for your position. But, you're not alone in wanting to obviously bring diverse stakeholders to the table. Across the country, economic developers do have diverse stakeholders in communities where they need to identify those stakeholders and then try to incorporate them into the conversations and make sure voices are heard. What would be your recommendation for even how to start that process? That's step one. How do we bring people to the table?
Well, I think that the very first thing you got to go in is the mindset that one size does not fit all. Mm-hmm. You have to go in with the idea that, okay, I need to learn about this particular group or this particular community. I need to understand what they see as important. What do they see as priorities? And it's that old adage, walk a mile in their shoes. Better understand what they're doing and then begin to have dialogue with different individuals. And as you begin to do that, you begin to identify who are their champions, who are the people that they put a lot of trust in. If you can gain them as allies and be truthful with them. And again, I always come in with that adage, look, there might be times when we both agree to disagree. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But we just got to find common ground to work on different projects. And so that's how I've developed these relationships. And it does take time. And it takes an investment of yourself to go out and make these types of a relationship or develop these types of relationships. And as you begin to grow there, those people will begin to introduce you to other people and you keep working. And again, at that point, you have to be real careful too, mm-hmm. because you don't want to overpromise what you can achieve. Mm-hmm. Because people will look at it and you say, well, we can get that done. And if you don't, suddenly people start judging your capabilities or judging what's your agenda? What are you trying to do? And so again, it's making sure you're doing that and then being transparent with the communities that you're working with. I mean, that's the one thing that I've tried to do. If I'm working with one of our municipalities, being open with their city council, being open with business owners, just to let them know this is what we're doing. Mm-hmm. There's no secret behind it. There's no agenda. This is what I'm hearing. This is what we're moving towards. And I'm open to input as we go through this because, we don't know everything and we just need to understand that better. And so as you work with tribes, that becomes critical because mm-hmm. the history of most tribes is that they've gone into discussions like this, especially with the federal government. Right. And then things change. And suddenly they're not seeing what they thought was promised to them or what was committed to them. And suddenly, things such as, they're lying to us and et cetera starts popping up. That's the history that most tribes have seen. And so you got to be very cognizant of that and takes things step by step, works on those trust issues, but then know that as you make commitments, make sure you can keep those commitments. And then as you begin to do that, you'll start building that relationship with those particular tribes or communities even that you're working with, because again, they all have a history.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really fair point. I think it's easy to come into a conversation or negotiation and think that you're coming in to maybe discuss that issue only. But as you mentioned with history, everyone's carrying their history when they walk in the door. So creating the opportunity for that to be expressed is a really good suggestion.
So Arvin, Forset is a transitioning economy. What are some of the strategies you have to move away from being so reliant on coal and natural gas?
Well, again, that's where we're working with our communities right now. We're beginning to focus on what advantages do we have in this region here. And how do we begin to build out on those advantages? One of the things that I've incorporated as we began looking at this is really looking at this from a strategic point of view and to get input from the communities. The best vehicle that we found for that, for this region, was to incorporate community-based volunteer teams. And so I brought teams together, and that's the vehicle I utilized to build our strategic plan. And within that strategic plan, we came up with 5 strategic goals we want to follow or we want to achieve. And so for each of those strategies, I built a team, all composed of community members. We have business owners, we have civic leaders, we have educators, we have key community members. Right now, we have a few tribal members. We want to build that aspect into it. And so again, we're bringing these teams together, and I'm getting a lot of ideas. People have a lot of different things. And as we begin to discuss things and learn from one another, we start honing down and to say, here are the objectives we want to go after within this particular goal. So again, we're seeing opportunities looking at energy. We're seeing deficiencies we have in infrastructure, like how do we get bulk equipment supplies out in and out of this region. One of the big projects we're working on is to bring a rail system here to San Juan County. We're looking at how we can enhance our broadband capabilities. We're learning more from our businesses now. We've gone out with a big business retention and expansion project where we've interviewed a little over 100 businesses here in San Juan County. That in itself was an experience because we built a survey that probably would take about an hour to go through. But there were many instances where for myself, I would go in and sit down with a business owner and I'm still there 2-3 hours later. And you talk to the business, they're saying, this is the first time somebody has actually come in and asked me about my business and what can we do to help you? And so again, it's building that relationship, building that common outlook in terms of what they see for their communities and how they see their businesses interacting. So given that, we're looking at rail, we're looking at a broadband. We're also looking at possibly designating this area as a hydrogen hub. We've had the Department of Energy here, the secretary here, talking about that possibility along with our state senator, Senator Heinrich. They were here talking to our communities, our civic leaders about that possibility. We're focused on how we can build bridges between us and the tribe so that we can enhance our broadband in a very effective manner. And how can we then make connections to the major municipalities around the 4-state region? So right now we are in that exploratory phase at this point. We have some ideas. We're out doing the necessary legwork to better understand some of these things that we would like, and then what it would take for us to get those pieces in place. We're working with the EDA. With the railroad piece, we got a bill grant for $2 million to enhance or to bring rail or to do the planning for that rail. We were able to get a MOU approved and signed between the Navajo Nation and San Juan County. Both of them agreeing that they will work together to bring rail to here to San Juan County, because we've got to go through Navajo Nation land. So we got to have their right of way in order to go through that. So we have an agreement with them to do that. So those are some of the things that we've been able to accomplish, and it's been kind of a step-by-step process moving forward to identify what are those areas. And the doors are opening right now, looking at manufacturing, looking at hydrogen development, even some new energy development possibilities here to help us diversify from just being fossil fuel dependent.
So I was actually going to ask you about infrastructure, and you answered a lot of it already, but this is a really hot topic throughout the United States. And obviously, you're transitioning to new economies, but you have a really unique geographic position because not only do you have to navigate infrastructure, maybe like within a county or within a city, but you are talking about multiple states and you're talking about tribal land as well. With that, do you feel like the Four Corners region has maybe more opportunities to attract infrastructure investment because you do have so many players? Or do you feel like it's really more of a challenge because you're trying to bring everyone together?
I think right now, Bethany, we have some distinct advantages in looking at this because really the corners of the state here, Northwest New Mexico, Southwest Colorado, Southeast Utah, and Northeast Arizona, we have for decades been in competition with our metropolitan areas. Mm-hmm. Here in New Mexico, it's the Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Las Cruces corridor. Mm-hmm. With Durango, Colorado, it's the Colorado Springs, Denver, Boulder area. Mm-hmm. With Utah, it's the Provo, Salt Lake City area. And then with Arizona, it's the Phoenix, Tucson region. But traditionally, because of our capabilities to produce oil, gas, natural gas, and coal, we've been the energy center or the energy source for the development of many of these cities. And because we were able to generate reliable, cheap power, a lot of these cities were able to grow and develop. So now we're in the processes of how do we come back together as a concerted group and really look at ourselves as the Four Corners region, looking at these new opportunities with rail, with manufacturing, with broadband development, and utilizing that as a four-state region to begin to build out the necessary infrastructure we need to continue our economic development efforts moving into the future. And the real power is we're beginning to recognize that as we become together, and if we can come together effective enough, our political clout could grow.
Right.
Because now you have four states that would be interested in seeing things happen here. And we can now begin to partner with other sovereign nations. We have tribes that are in Colorado, that are in New Mexico, that are in Arizona, and that are in Utah, who we can also collaborate with and show that we can partner with these tribal entities and communities to help them with their economic development efforts. Sure. And so again, now you have a diverse group that's being affected. And if you can find ways to invest money into this region, the benefits would be tremendous in this region. Sure. And so again, we're beginning to understand that, and we're beginning to work in towards that type of goal. There's still a lot of work to be done because communities here have been fairly independent.
Sure.
And so coming back together and working together at times is a new learning process for the communities. And as I indicated before, one of those aspects is trust. How can I trust one community? Are they going to try to steal our idea, et cetera, et cetera? And again, it's really looking at how can we support one another and really develop our efforts here in the Four Corners region. And I think there's a real good potential, not only to bring that type of development here, but you would ultimately be affecting a diverse population across the board.
Yeah, I mean, it really sounds like a lot of your opportunities rely on that regionalism approach by bringing the stakeholders together.
It does. It does, because really you can't be isolated here, because if you want to go and put a transmission line or a railroad or a road or a highway, you got to cross a number of different jurisdictions.
Sure.
And so the only way you can do that is having that relationship develop so you can move through those things as smoothly as you can. And again, businesses are looking for consistency, and that's the only way you can bring consistency to this effort.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
So Arvin, you spoke earlier about wanting to contribute to your tribe. This concept of being invested in your community is something that's shared by champions of rural communities everywhere. You also mentioned bringing together, I should say successfully bringing together a group of volunteers to work on a few of your projects, which, anyone that has managed a group of volunteers in their career. They know how difficult that can be. And so how do we create more of this investment mindset where people look at their community as something to be a part of and really, volunteer in and, really get involved in those kind of projects rather than just a place to live?
Well, I think a lot of it really begins with the education effort and getting people to participate. One thing that I found here, and this was confirmed in the BRE survey that we did, that word of mouth here in this region is very, very strong. People will listen to other people in terms of their recommendations or what their experience was with another organization, with another company, even hiring people, getting recommendations from different people that they know as to who can they hire, or have you heard about this person, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we've been able to do was to start bringing people together and giving them the boundaries in terms of what we were looking at within a specific area. But then from there, begin to foster discussions amongst the group and get feedback. Because again, what you're looking at here is one, finding common ground, but you guys know this as well as I do. If you go into a group and you start giving ideas, but they never take any one of your ideas, are you going to stay with that group? No.
Nope.
But, if you find ways that you begin to incorporate these different ideas, and in many ways you begin to find common ground that incorporates a number of people's ideas, and look at that and finding ways that it'll enhance our capabilities in terms of either economic or community development, then you begin to develop and grow. And then as they start seeing these things happen, what we're seeing is that people start talking to each other, saying, these guys are doing X and they're doing Y. And that's something that's really beneficial, and we should continue to do that. And so that's how we've slowly been able to build our participation in this, looking at new ideas. If people want to contribute, we've been looking at how we could do that. So it's been a facilitation process that has allowed us to do that. I've got a contractor working with me that's done a tremendous job in bringing that type of effort together. And I think it also helps that the person I brought in knows many of these people. She's run a couple programs here in the county for a number of years. And so she knows many of the people here. And so again, that builds on that trust aspect to help people with this facilitation process. So looking at teams, that's how we've been able to bring teams together, keep them together, and really look at not shutting things out, but mainly putting boundaries around what we're trying to discuss or what we're trying to achieve. And so looking at the diversity of the area here, again, that's what we're building, and it's a process. People want to come in and they want to see results today. I use the analogy sometimes. I say, my kids are the same way. We've been brought up on cell phones and et cetera, and the way the computer is right now and internet. People would watch me when I'm working the computer sometimes, and if there's trouble, I just patient, I wait. They look at me and they say, well, how do you do that? I said, guys, when I first started, I was in the period when we had computer cards, and you had to have one piece of algorithm on each card. I said, when we used to have those 4-inch discs that could store 500K of information, we were in hog heaven.
Floppy disks.
And so I said, it's looking at that, but now we want things today. I said, when you're looking at relationship building, it's the same thing. You've got to build on it day by day, piece by piece. And eventually you get to the point to where you start seeing some good results, and then you start building on those results. You start sharing those successes, even if they're small ones, and you start building in that fashion. And so that's how we've been going. And given the fact that we have a strategic plan in place now, has also been very helpful, because now we have our priorities, and there are a lot of good people coming in with a lot of ideas. But what I'm able to do now is say, okay, we'll put that up there. We'll put this here, and we will see how that comes as we continue our efforts. But here's our focus right now. This is what we're going to be focused on. Mm-hmm. And you have something there that you say, this wasn't just Arvin Trujillo that made this up. This was the community. Mm-hmm. They put this together, and this is what the community said is the priority that they want to work on. So we're going to move in this direction. Some will stay and say, okay, we understand it. Others will say, well, we'll go find somebody else to do this. And that's great. Mm-hmm. So again, it helps give me focus, because again, I'm not a type of person that says, well, let me throw something up against the wall and let's see what sticks. I don't have the time, nor do I have the resources to do something like that. And so having the strategic plan and then building that aspect of team development mm-hmm. is really what has helped us get to where we are right now. And I can truly say that much that we've achieved right now has been through community effort. It just hasn't been me doing all the work. It's been the community as a whole working together.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some lessons there when you talk about the community working together, and you really are also talking about the importance of patience, to let things take time to build, not being so quick maybe to rush into making decisions, but to actually give time for the community to give feedback and participate.
Yeah, because again, even there, Bethany, people got to buy into your idea. Mm-hmm. They have to buy into a vision. And that's what the strategic plan helps us do. It develops that vision and that mission. Mm-hmm. And now I got to get people to buy into that. And this is the vehicle by which, through these strategic goal teams, we've got focus group teams, mm-hmm. and now we're beginning to build business retention and expansion teams. But through this team effort, we're still focused on that strategic plan, mm-hmm. looking at that vision, and everything ties to that. So you have a common thread throughout this whole effort in order to say, this is what we want to achieve, and here's where we want to put our money and invest our time.
Sure. Yeah, the strategic plan is so important. And it's great that you guys have been able to narrow it down to where you have teams of volunteers working even at the very micro level. I think one thing I want to point out to our listeners is that there are some ancillary benefits to having so many community members involved in this process beyond the obvious of getting the buy-in. And that's that you're also developing future leaders. One of the issues the economic development industry has is the same issue that, we're seeing companies across the US have, and that's a lack of talent. So being able to build up community leaders also means you have more people for your board in the future, and potentially people to even work in economic development if they find an affinity for it.
That is a good point, because again, when we were first talking about what vehicle we would use, the 3 areas or really the 4 areas that came out was, one, we need to educate our community and our community members about economic development and what opportunities and possibilities there are. We got to get our community members to participate, because again, it was just as noted before, when I first came into this position and I was talking to businesses, you talk about economic development, they say, oh, that's the city, or oh, that's Forsyth, or oh, that's the state. They were pushing it on somebody else. But going through this process, you're beginning to show community members that participate that you are a part of the solution. And then as you begin to do that, you begin to build buy-in, so that as decisions are made and directions are made, people are there, as you indicated, Bethany, people are there not only as leaders, but they're also there as advocators. They advocate for this particular position. And then with that, you get the support that you need to move these initiatives forward. Because again, some of these things are fairly long-term, but you've got to start somewhere and it's got to continue. And as things change, because we do have turnover on our teams, because these people are busy. And I'm very cognizant of their time. Mm-hmm. And many of them, they've been with us for a year, and they say, Arvin, I've contributed for a year. I need to go and do some other things. Fine, we really appreciate it. But now we're starting to bring new people in, and it's continuing that process. And so again, it's been a way to really build that continuity within the community here.
All right, Arvin. Well, we are going to play shovel toss. So I am going to toss some questions your way and you just answer them as fast as you can. They're kind of get to know you questions. And so there's some fun ones mixed in there.
Okay.
So we'll start. So what is the last book you read?
First things first.
What is your favorite podcast?
Favorite podcast is Paul Gessing's, I think it's called I Know It. It's out in New Mexico here.
What is the very first thing you do in the morning?
Read my Bible.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
My first aspirations was to become a medical doctor.
Wow. All right. Who is your favorite superhero and why?
Favorite superhero. I think my favorite superhero is got to be the Hulk. And the reason why is, he when he's in his condition there, he just kind of takes things over and he just makes things happen. If he has to bust things up or whatever he has to do to get the job done, he goes and gets it done.
Does it? Awesome. So what superpower would you want and why?
Superpower that I would want. I think I would want to be able to read people truly effectively and not miss it.
Good one. Good one. That would be helpful. If you could live anywhere in the world for a year, where would you want to live?
Anywhere in the world for a year. I think I would like to live in Switzerland.
Ooh, that one's on my list too. That sounds great. If you could have a meal with anyone in history, who would it be with and why?
Anyone in history. I think I would like to have a meal with a gentleman called Eli Parker. He was a Native American who was the assistant to Ulysses S. Grant. And he was in the Army, and I believe he was a major in the Army. I would just love to sit down with him and see how did he transition from his Native American upbringing and being a part of the U.S. Army within General Grant's administration, and how did he make it work, especially in that time period when reservations were being established and tribes were being decimated and etc. Yet there he was.
Wow, great answer. Who was your favorite band or singer when you were a teenager?
When I was a teenager, I'd have to say Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Great answer. I love them. Last question. What was your most embarrassing hairstyle or article of clothing from your childhood?
I think the most embarrassing for me was back in the 70s. It was a hot thing to do, but now that I look at pictures of it, having those plaid bell bottoms with the big shoes and the big belts, and then having the kind of that crushed velvet kind of sports jacket on, and then I thought I was really cool. But you look at it now, you look at that polyester shirt and the plaid pants, and it's just like, oh my gosh.
Yep. Isn't that how it always goes? That's exactly why I have that question on there, because you look back at pictures, it's like, oh, what was I thinking? Awesome. Well, thank you for being such a good sport and playing the shovel toss game with us. I appreciate it.
Sure thing. Interesting questions.
Yes.
I want to see a picture of you in those plaid bell bottoms.
Oh,
right?
Gosh. I better go burn that.
You're lucky it was before the days of Facebook.
Right. Well, Arvin, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been a great conversation, and thank you for sharing your background and knowledge with us. It's just been awesome.
Well, again, I thank you for the questions, and it was fun. And again, I just want to showcase what we're doing here in San Juan County, and this is a great opportunity to do that. We're trying to make some things happen, and hopefully that will help open some eyes. And again, my experience in terms of really working with tribes and working with communities and trying to bring all these entities together, I just really think that that's important. And I know there are other tribes across the country, and as Bethany indicated, that, they are going through some of the same situations we are. And so if there's a way that I might just kind of help some of that's great.
We're glad to bring attention to what's happening in the Four Corners region. I think, as you mentioned early on, it's maybe an area that doesn't get as much attention because that goes to the metropolitan areas, but it's a very critical region to the growth of those states. And we look forward to watching your strategic plan be put into action and seeing these changes.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I would like to extend another great thank you to Arvin Trujillo, CEO of Four Corners Economic Development, who along with Chris Hunter has become a showcase Golden Shovel client. We are super proud of that website. You can visit that website at fourcornersed.com, and that's 4. You can also like them on Facebook at Four Corners ED, again, 4. And follow them on LinkedIn at Four Corners Economic Development. This time you spell out the word 4. As far as Golden Shovel news goes, you can check out a new kind of resource page on the Golden Shovel website, Resources for Economic Development Professionals. Very good depository of educational materials, especially for maybe new employees that come on board, maybe not super familiar with what economic development is. That's a great page full of great resources to download. As far as Golden Shovel social media accounts, you can like us on Facebook at Shovel Toss. Follow us on Twitter at Gold Shovel. LinkedIn, follow us at Golden Shovel Agency, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Golden Shovel Agency. We'll be back in action in December for our season finale of Shovel Talk. We've made it through a year. We have not heard if we're being picked up for 2022, but we're crossing our fingers here. Talk in December.